Tim. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you very much, Amelia, for inviting me and for those lovely little waves. It's nice to see some faces on the screen. Um, and I'm given to understand this is simply an experience, strength, and hope. So we'll see what comes out of that. I know almost no one in this meeting, so I better do some basic introduction. Uh, the most important thing is that I'm an alcoholic. The second important thing, I suppose, for me, it's not really for anyone else, but I haven't had a drink for a very long time, since July 1993, in fact. So whatever I have been doing has enabled me to not drink for 31 years. Now, given that I'm an alcoholic, this is a pretty major fact. Also, it's not the case that everyone that got sober at the same time as me in the meetings I was going to is still sober. Some people are. Some people are drunk. Some people are dead. Some people are institutionalized, and there are various other sorry states and sticky ends. And I started to see this very soon after arriving in AA. I saw people, in fact, a sponsor of mine slipped and fell down some concrete stairs. He lived in a basement in Fulham, one of those basement flats in those Victorian converted houses, and he fell down the concrete stairs to the basement flat and dead within a few weeks. And other people died very soon after slipping. And in fact, when I was slipping in my first 6 months in AA, so from January to July 1993, I got myself into some sticky situations. What's a sticky situation? I'll give you an example. I was in Moscow, don't ask why, but I was in Moscow, and I didn't live in Moscow, I lived in a different city in Russia. Um, but I was in Moscow staying with some people, and I got drunk and could not remember the address of where I was staying. Uh, this is a pretty serious problem. There was no internet. There were no mobile phones. There is no way of sorting yourself out. Somehow my clever little feet found their way, and in my drunken state, it took several hours, but I found my way back. And being drunk in Moscow, and as I was, quite disorderly, uh, was not the innocuous thing it often is in London, where you're given a rap on the knuckles by the police. You'll get beaten up by the police in Moscow, or certainly you would in the early 90s. It was a very dangerous thing to be. That's one example. I would become mischievous when drunk. I would do things I really shouldn't do with people I really shouldn't do them with. I would be in a perfectly safe setting, and I don't know, 16 drinks in, the devil would take me and would take me out a roving in the streets, picking fights, causing trouble. Uh, I should not drink, put it like that. I also have relatives who've died of alcoholism, so we know where it goes. It's not a steady state, it's a progressive condition, and it's fatal. It's also incurable, it's not going to go on its own, and I'm always going to have it. So it became of paramount importance to me when I was new to discover what it was that some people were doing, which was enabling them to stay consistently sober, regardless of their emotional condition or background or the plethora of other difficulties they came into recovery with, and why other people weren't. And the pattern that started to develop very quickly when I started to observe what was going on was really a very simple package deal of steps, quickly, simply, no rummaging around endlessly. Get in, write down some stuff, get out, tell it, done. Go and apologise to all the people that need apologies, go and pay back the money. And then immediately start helping people. I was told when I was new, if you're going to survive, you're going to need to start carrying the message straight away. But I haven't done the steps. Yes, but you're learning stuff as you're going along. You can pass on everything that you're learning right from day one. So meetings were not places I was to complain. though there was much I had to complain about. But I had to do that one-to-one or with little groups of friends, but in a problem-solving way, not in a sort of dumping, venting way, but this is the problem, what are we going to do about it? I was presented with the idea very soon in AA that any problem I had could be solved using the steps. Solved in the sense of declassifying situations which I saw as problems into facts, mere facts of my existence. I'd wasted a few years drinking. That wasn't a problem, it was a fact. I couldn't do anything about that. It was done. So no point in dwelling on it. It's to be simply accepted. But also to resolve other problematic situations into courses of action. I still had a course I was in the middle of. Well, I was three-quarters of the way through it, and I'd simply not been present. Well, I could do something about that. I could work doubly hard, which I did in my first year of recovery, and I recovered the lost time, as it were, by completing the course and doing so quite adequately. There were things I could change, there were things I couldn't change. If I couldn't change it, it wasn't a problem, it was a fact. If I could change it, it wasn't a problem, it was an action plan. And if I didn't know what action, find a grown up and ask them. I knew nothing when I got sober. And this is, I think, a very important thing. Not only did I know nothing, by the time repeated relapsing over 6 months had knocked the stuffing out of me, not only did I know nothing, I knew nothing. And this was very important because this created a nice big space for other people to provide me with information. And my job was simply to accept that on the authority of how much better they were doing than me. So not to think through whether what was coming down the tubes to me seemed reasonable or rational or sensible or accorded with my belief system or prior experience. I didn't need to ask myself any of those questions. I simply needed to ask myself, how are these people doing? Are they doing better than me? Yes. Well, I'll try believing what they believe, thinking what they think, and doing what they do. I cannot change my feelings directly. In fact, Jung said something to the effect that mental illness largely stemmed from an unconscious attempt to avoid legitimate pain. That's a quotation. But also my addiction is about trying to change the way I feel. Why should I? Nothing wrong with feeling. But if I persistently discover myself in negative states, I'm the one that's creating them. Other people are in the same world, perfectly cheerful, just getting on with it. So it's not coming from me. I know people have had most appalling childhoods, absolutely fine, because they've dealt with it. They've accepted what needed to be accepted. They've changed what could be changed, and then they've got on with their lives. And they refuse to continue suffering because of things which are gone, dead and buried. And this was the great hope that I could change, that my reaction to life could change, that my emotions could change, not by trying to change them directly, but by changing the beliefs, the thinking, and the behavior which lie upstream of the feelings. It's as though feelings are always in a relationship either with a belief or a thought or an action, so that if I take the feeling, turn it over, there is a belief which is causing it, there is a thought which is causing it, there is an action which is causing it. They're not coming from nowhere. And even when I feel as though my emotions are being caused by the past, this is the big secret I learned. They're not. They're caused by my present thinking about the past. So I'm never troubled by anything that has happened in the past. I'm troubled by my present thought about it, which means the problem is here, which means the problem can be solved. If the problem is in the past, I'm fucked. If the problem is in my genetics or my brain or in society or in the various categories of anomaly in society I belong to, I can't do anything about those. If my problem lies in what I'm currently thinking and believing about the situation, something can change. And that's what step 4 is. Make a list of everything you believe, think, and do, and we have a system for doing that in the big book, of accessing that via the emotion, which is why, by the way, I've needed to be completely free of any chemical influence, because I needed to know that the feelings are the ones which are coming from me and not coming from the chemical. And I was, when I was very new, drugged up a little bit, and I had to come. I'm not giving advice to anyone, by the way. I just hasten to add that I don't give a fig what anyone else does. But I needed to stop all that stuff and face the horror of the experience of life I was creating for myself, because the horror was the gateway to the way out. Anything which was taking the edge off was stopping me accessing the feelings. Without the feelings, there was no way of tracing what was behind them. And it is what was behind them that needed to change. Unfortunately, there were a bazillion meetings once I got back to London from Russia, where I was living. I had to come back to get sober. There were meetings there, but not as we know them. I think it's a lot better now. Still not as we know it, but a lot better. But anyway, back to the point. Once I got back to London, a bazillion meetings. And the point about the bazillion meetings, although I wasn't going to be fixed straight away, took a while, let me tell you. Although I wasn't going to be fixed straight away, if I went to plenty of meetings, went to plenty of fellowship, hung out with people, read meditation books, prayed, used the big book, did 100, listened to speaker tapes. They used to be actual tapes, cassette tapes, and people used to send them to me through the post. And I used to listen to them, so that not a moment was going by that I wasn't using for recovery purposes. I needed all of that merely in order not to commit suicide in my first year. I wasn't well wrapped when I got here. But what I discovered, there were sufficient moments of reprieve throughout the course of the day from all of those individual little tools that I got glimmers of hope. And what happened, those glimmers of hope started to join up together, and I had little pools of hope. And then I had days which were reasonably okay. And I thought, because I'm going in the right direction, I can stand the hellish periods because I know they're an illusion. They don't feel like an illusion, but they are. How do I know? Because sensible people were telling me. And who are the sensible ones? The cheerful ones. The people who are jolly, who are unaffected by what is going on around them. The people who weren't or were no longer victims. It can take a little while to find those, but trust me, they're there. Just as I say, bazillion meetings. If you go to a bazillion meetings, you'll find them. There were some meetings where there was only one person I really trusted. But I really trusted the one person I really trusted. That was enough. I don't need everyone to represent what AA can do for me. I just needed a few people. And then I was careful to listen to them. Give you an example, and then I'll probably finish. Someone told me when I was a few weeks sober, they'd heard me share, so they had some data to go on. And I shared at length, so they had a lot of data to go on. They said, unless you do some family of origin work, that was his voice, unless you do some family origin work, you're not going to stay sober. And I felt like this huge weight had landed on me. And I went to Maureen, and she said, and she wasn't one for swearing, Wimbledon housewife. She said, horseshit, you're a common or garden alcoholic. Do the steps first, do them properly, start sponsoring some other people, give it a minute, by which she meant give it a few years, and then see what's left. And I did that, and there was nothing left. All that great burdensome complexity of psychological disorders turned out to be downstream of basically a spiritual dislocation, in that rather than occupying my space as a child of God, asking God, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? I guess I'll do that, which is how I live today. Rather than doing that, I'm a self-made person. I'm in charge of my own life. I'm going to decide what to do and what to think and what to believe and what's going on. I'm in charge. Look at me. That was my problem. And all the psychological crap was the consequence of that fundamental error, the belief that I'm this separate being that has to find a way in a material world before I die because there's nothing after death. I mean, that will fuck you up. That idea that you're going to die and that'll be the end for you will fuck you up like nothing. Anyway, I've gotten over that. I believe in all sorts of wonderful things that are impossible to believe, but I'm going to finish genuinely on this. Alice in Wonderland, you can believe 6 things before breakfast that are impossible to believe if only you try hard enough. That's what AA is about, believing things that are impossible to believe, and then they come true. That's all I have. Thank you.